Hi there. I want to welcome you here today for another daily devotion. We're going through the book of Matthew together, and today's verses are taken from Matthew 19, verses 7 through 9. Today's verses really continue Jesus' teaching on divorce. The Pharisees come up to Jesus once again to test him by asking him, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any reason? Their question seems to reflect the view of Hillel, who was a rabbi that allowed for the slightest reasons to divorce a wife. So his interpretation likely came from Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4, where the words some indecency are used. He obviously interpreted the term very broadly. However, a rival teacher named Shammai took it to mean sexual misconduct only. So obviously some confusion here. So the Pharisees are hoping to set Jesus against Moses by questioning him as to the proper grounds of divorce. Let's go ahead and read our passage together where Jesus continues his statement regarding divorce. They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and send her away?" Jesus said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery." So Jesus' answer really transcends the debate about the wording of Deuteronomy, and he returns to the order of creation set by God in Genesis 2:24, which says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So Jesus shows that Moses wasn't justifying divorce and certainly was not commanding it as the Pharisees were claiming, but instead his regulation was to protect the wives in the event of a divorce. Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4 ends with a prohibition for a man to remarry a woman he had previously divorced. We ask the question, why? Well, because the husband was treating her like property to be disposed of and then later reacquired as he willed, rather than treating her as an equal partner in a covenant relationship. So a hardness of heart with respect to marriage or divorce was not an appropriate interpretation of the passage. So Jesus clarifies by saying that it was not lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason except for sexual immorality. This is a broad term and can refer to a number of sexual sins in addition to adultery. So Jesus recognizes that sexual infidelity really strikes at the heart of the marital covenant and is a proper grounds of divorce. However, divorce is not mandatory. It's reconciliation is always preferred if possible. Now, I could easily apply this passage to any number of examples of sexual immorality, but what I want to reveal is the heart of God in this passage. God's people over and over again throughout the Old Testament are referred to as harlots and adulterous people towards their covenant God. He alone reserved the right to lawfully divorce his people, but over and over he shows his patience and grace towards them. He at no point permanently cuts them off, but instead promises to graft them back into the promise. So despite the constant infidelity of his chosen people over and over and over again, God says, "You shall be my people, and I will be your God," demonstrating that he's way more patient, way more merciful, and way more gracious towards the wrongdoings of his people than we can ever pretend to be. His heart is always for reconciliation, and so should ours be. Now, we live in an age where marriages and friendships they end over the smallest infractions. You can drive down the 163 and see signs for fast divorce and all the rest, and this is antithetical to the heart of God. Colossians 3 commands us to put to death what is earthly in us. So as God's chosen ones who are holy and beloved, we're to put on compassionate hearts, kindness, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so also must you forgive. So above all these, we put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Now, if we're able to do that, we'd be less likely to identify our relationships by their wrongdoings and more likely to triumph in love, which seeks God's heart of reconciliation. So is there a proper grounds for divorce? Yes, but that's not the first thing we should seek. There are times when we should remove ourselves from certain situations, but that's not the first thing we should run to. We should rather seek reconciliation. So given the divisiveness in our nation, as we as Christians really have the opportunity to shine forth the heart of God like never before. Where there's disunity, we should bring unity. Where there's hate, we should bring love. And where there's chaos, we should bring order. So consider your relationships, especially your marriages. Are you focusing more on what your spouse is not doing rather than what they are doing? Now, I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. If we were to encourage half as much as we criticize and complain, perhaps there'd be a whole lot less burnout in ministry, marriages, and other relationships as a whole. So considering what a great debt God has forgiven you and I, who is it that we're needing to extend forgiveness to? That's the question I want to leave you with today. Thanks again for joining us. God bless you all. I look forward to seeing you again next time.